Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I know a lot of you have complaints about our current South Korean president, Yoon Suk-yeol. He won by a narrow margin to Lee Jae-myung, the Democratic Party candidate who almost became president himself. But there were a lot of controversies swirling around him that followed him into his current position as the party leader. And now people are wondering, is it finally the end of the road for him? Because this week we almost had another politically motivated, let's just say, disappearance of a person tied to one of his biggest scandals. And politicians are asking, why is everybody dying around him? Why are there always mobsters popping up in this story? And really, is this a story or is this reality? Is this a movie or is this real life? And if you go through some of the past videos where it seems very obvious that there are some psychopathic tendencies perhaps in this main character, well, psychopaths usually live out their false lives. So yes, the movie version of their life is their true life. And so when we're looking on their life, we're all like, what is going on? And so we want to get into that because what the heck is going on, you guys? This is getting a little bit crazy. And of course, if you want your gift in time for the holidays of glowing, beautiful skin that absolutely needs no skincare product applied and something that will basically last forever, that just uses rechargeable electricity, this is truly eco-friendly skincare because you're not wasting any kind of consumable packaging. You just basically sit under this light, calm yourself for about 15 minutes a day or every other day, and you are rebuilding the collagen from within. Coupon code just for Seoulite TV viewers, Seoulite TV at either ecofaceplatinum.com or seoulite.tv. So all this and more, stay tuned. I was waiting for the dust to settle on this story, and it hasn't completely yet, but I wanted you guys to know and be ahead of the curve before it breaks out, because I think this is about to break out into probably international news when people are gonna be like, oh my god, they have like a real life criminal mobster godfather drama going on in Korea. So you guys will know before everybody else will. And so this is basically the pieces in play about where the tsunami is about to hit, because it seems as if prosecutors have gotten almost everything that they needed. Now, what just happened this week? Their key man, so basically the witness, the star witness that has been singing for about a year, basically reportedly tried to end his life. But people are thinking like, did you really, or were you playing a game? That's how jaded we are here in Korea, that we would not to in general take that lightly. But it didn't look like he really did do it. And like I said before in other videos, Korean people are, especially in the political arena, are always looking for coded messages. And let me tell you what happened, because it looked like basically he was sending a message to the prosecution saying like, look, don't mess with me. I'm your best asset. If without me, you're gonna lose your golden ticket to the prosecution. If you want to get Lee Jae-myung, if you want to be able to get him, you better not mess with me. So basically, it was a little bit odd. So on Wednesday, like between 2 and 4 a.m., apparently he had made an attempt on his life. And then again at 1 p.m. on the same day. So I don't know, did it not work? And then he had to like go home and Google and then stop for breakfast and then maybe take a nap and have lunch and then try again at 1 p.m. in his car. And then his lawyer called it in at 9:50 p.m. and then he went to the hospital. And then his injuries were not life-threatening at all. He had tried to stab himself in the neck area, shoulder area. So people are like thinking like, okay, so he was trying to do something and it didn't really work out, and he's trying to send a message to the prosecution. Why? Because the next day, the prosecution was going to send him a letter saying like, okay, dude, now you have to come into jail and be in jail while we continue this investigation. And now he gets to be in the hospital recuperating. And in Korea, you know, in all these cases, you always want to go to the hospital instead of a jail. You know, when the presidents, you know, almost all the presidents, after they get out of office, they go to jail, and they're always trying to say like, oh, I have some health ailment, and then they try to go to a nice hospital. And so he's in the hospital right now. So let's back this up. So basically that's what happened this week. He's the star witness. Now, why is this so creepy, and why are people like finally saying like, okay, we're creeped out? Because this is a string of people who have either done it successfully or tried. So let's just go over the body count first, and then I'll go over like, you know, what's the big, why is there a body count? Like, you know, what's the crime, and how is he, you know, if y'all want to know how to do a con, like if you've come to the con man school, and how to be a politician slash con man slash, I don't want to call it, but by proxy, kind of like a hitman. Well, listen up. I mean, this is how you do it. And I don't even think this is Korean style, but it's sort of Korean style. Okay, so, and not to make light of this, but basically this is why people are shocked, because this reads like straight as, almost like as if it's a movie. Okay, so it's only been a year. It's only been a year. Last year, we were talking about this. So right before the election, because remember the election, I can't even, it's not even been, you know, the presidential election was earlier this year. So last December 10th, 2021, Yoo Han-gi took his own life. Then all the people said, we don't know him. Basically, he was involved in this financial firm. We'll get back to which financial firm that is. Another man who was involved in the same financial firm, Kim Man-bae, 11 days later, on December 21st, 2021, also took his own life and was successful. Also had key evidence. 2 people gone in a very short period of time. Now, the media is making a big deal of all these, but they even forgot about the mysterious guy that died under mysterious circumstances in the motel room. We covered that in a previous video. Take a look. But basically, a guy in January of 2022 was gonna whistleblow on this whole thing, and he had posted on Facebook saying that these 2 dudes that had killed themselves under very mysterious circumstances, he's like, I know why they did it, and I know exactly how sus this all was because of Lee Jae-myung, and I'm gonna give more details. And then boom, like he was like kind of laying low for a while in a motel, but I guess like, you know, whatever, like the goons found him and then made it look like he had offed himself, and that was it. And so they're not even counting this one, okay? So then in April of 2022, April 20th, Yoo Dong-gyu, he attempted suicide in jail with sleeping pills, and before he did that, he said he felt betrayed because all the people who were, you know, involved in this inner ring said that like, oh, we don't know her, like, you know, the whole thing about this whole thing was like, oh, we don't know her. And throughout this whole thing, the reason why I also wanted to wait for the dust to settle is like, it was kind of like speculation, because like, they were like, oh wait, how do you say you don't know her? Her as in, him, these guys. You guys were all on a trip together, and so it's very clear now they knew each other. All right, so then throughout this time though, Kim Man-bae, the guy that, had like cut his neck this week and, looked like he maybe did not purposefully did what he did. He was in jail and he was talking a lot. And then he got released about a month ago. And so people are wondering why he did this. And they're surmising, he was probably under pressure. Even though he was cooperating, prosecutors are really rough. And so people are saying like, maybe he was stressed out about how rough he was being handled, or trying to send a message, or just like lighten up or whatever. But he was probably pissed off. Then he has to go back into jail. So he essentially had that whole time of talking. And so he becomes officially the fourth person, among this cohort in this inner circle, whom basically Lee Jae-myung says like, I don't really know them, like maybe I met them a couple of times, and people are like, you know them, okay? They're basically your dudes handling your political slush fund. Okay, so now let's get into this. So every time Lee Jae-myung was like asked about these, it's like, this is so untrue. So officially from Lee Jae-myung, he's saying like, this is so untrue. You guys are just making all this up. He's now like, the head of the Democratic Party. And he's always denied this on the campaign trail. And he says, I have never taken a dime of this. And, in that way, I think he is very truthful when he says, I have never taken a dime, because it's obvious that he set up a system where other people are taking the dimes, a lot of big dimes, for him. Now, how are you supposed to do this? So I'm sorry for, explaining this and, in a way where you can try this at home, but you would need a lot. You would basically need to be a mayor of a city, and you would need to have connections to the mob and a relatively medium to large size business conglomerate, and a lot of political connections, and the willingness to hire hitmen. So if you can do all those things at home, then you can probably replicate this. If not, then probably not. So it's probably a good story. All right. So he basically, in Korean politics, you need money to move things. It's the only thing that gets people to agree. And you need a slush fund because, you can't use official money. Where are you going to get all this money? Especially Lee Jae-myung, he says like, oh, I was so poor. I grew up so poor. I worked in a factory. I was like, dying from the fumes when I was a little kid. And, I was a poor little kid working in the factory. And how you get all this money? So there's a lot of ways, I guess, for him to be able to figure out along the way. And one of the ways that he's being accused of is that while he was the mayor of a city south of Seoul, a booming new suburb, Seongnam, when you have these big housing apartment complexes developed on land that is part of the city is involved in the development, and profits will go back to the city. So, and it happens in cities all around Korea, and people are just like, okay, that's good. Money will go and help fund the city. But people looked at his project and were puzzled because they're like, oh, that's a little bit odd because you set it up where the profits don't go back to the city, but goes back to the financiers. Okay, so you might be like, oh, those greedy big banks. But then they were like, this is a little bit odd because yes, there were some big banks attached to it as the financiers, but there was one little tiny investment bank that nobody ever heard of and was super new, and that was the bank that got all the profits, or most of the profits. And that bank was called Hwacheon Daewoo. I'll just call it the little bank because it's kind of hard to remember. So that little bank was founded by a former journalist. So it's not even a finance person, but it's kind of like a person with a tie connection or loyalty or some sort of probably some leverage with Lee Jae-myung. So then sometimes people you are always asking like, oh gosh, why in Korea are like relationships so important? Yeah, because it's all about money, okay? Like like this kind of stuff is all done through relationships. So they made this investment company the beneficiary of the profits that would have gone to the city. And so it became very profitable. So the distributions went, normally, but then the money that should have gone to the city went into this tiny investment bank. And there is, while this whole story was going along, the reason why I didn't want to cover it so much and bore you was like there's been evidence along the way. Like it was hard to get the profits to this little investment bank. Why? Because you have to change some laws. Because the laws say that it has to go to the city. They were able to bribe the people on the city council who are, making the laws. And then they say like, okay, let it go to this little bank. And they were able to, I think, bribe some of the other people on the other partnership, everybody who was involved in it, who usually would be like, no, we're basically massage. So there's like a paper trail. So in the end, this little bank got a lot of money. And so that becomes a very powerful place for Lee Jae-myung to then start using the money. But you can't use it directly. It's hard to use it directly. Okay, little boys and girls who want to become future criminals, how? Again, I'm just joking because this is really hard to do. And this is like a movie, right? So this is how they're basically accusing Lee Jae-myung of doing this. And it's all by proxy because Lee Jae-myung really has none of his hands touching this, because the guy that, is accused of kind of faking this week's, self-offing in his car was the sole owner of like this little bank. Then he set up his own little company. Now, one of the uses of this money that Lee Jae-myung is being accused of is paying his exorbitant lawyer fees. Where is he gonna get, he's always pretending he has no money. He's just a civil servant, even though, he sends his wife to steal fancy, steaks and fruit and stuff like that, but I don't know. I think that's kind of also sends a message to the young kids that like in Korea, you gotta be like this politician, doing hits on people just to have a good steak and a good apple. But anyhow, so all of these legal fees, how is he gonna pay the legal fees? So he's being accused of having his legal fees paid by this relatively large mid-sized company that specializes in making underwear. And one of the biggest brands is Try. It's kind of like an old school brand. Like a lot of ajumas wear this brand. And people are like, but how did this work out? And in a way, he used his own money to pay for his legal fees, essentially through this little bank. Because since he was the mayor, he's the one that basically saying like, look, I'm building this, I'm letting this development apartment complex come here. So then you, former journalist, you're going to set up this little bank. We're going to pretend you own it, but really, I control everything. And it's going to be my money, even though we pretend it's your money. And then if I need to pay my lawyers, we're going to find a way to loop-de-loop-de the money and pay my lawyers. So this is how he's being accused of doing it. So how did the big company, the underwear company, pay off his his lawyer bill? So apparently, like, that's where, like, they found, like, the transaction or some sort of, like, shady, like, cash thing, like, from the corporation. They're like, okay, but how did it get from the little bank to the corporation? So the little bank was owned by the guy who tried to off himself. He made his own company, and he basically loaned his own company some money, or he gave, like, dividends to his own company. Then he gave or loaned money to this guy called the Motorcycle Man, who is an ex-mobster. Yeah, this ex-mobster used to work at that underwear company, and then he got hired at the little bank, and he also set up his own little company. So basically, they work at the little bank together, they set up their own company, and then so they took the money out of the little bank, put it in his little company, and then I guess they made, like, a fake transaction between the underwear company and the Motorcycle Man's company, and then they got that money, and then they paid Lee Jae-myung's lawyer fees. So if you're able to follow that, and if you're able to do all those things and make relationships with all those kinds of people, then there is one template for you to be a crooked politician with blood on your hands, because that is the way it's looking. And even people within his own party right now are trying to get rid of him, because this is looking like it's about to explode into probably one of the biggest political scandals of the century, the decade. It might be so big that it might be so big that it's not big, because it's so unbelievable, if you know what I mean. That, like, people won't believe it because it's so shocking. And I think that's also how he's been able to get away with it and being so confident in denying it, because the alternative is so grotesque. Yeah, so, but I think people are just like, how many more? And over the summertime, that was the question I was positing. How many more bodies need to go before something is done to stop this madness? And it looks like they're gathering enough evidence for something, but because the pressure is on this guy who is trying to send a message to the prosecutors, and he is saying that he's being overly pressured. The guy that, maybe had faked his own self-offing in the car. He's saying that the prosecutors are asking him to make things up. So to me, that sounds like the prosecutors have something, but not enough somethings to make it stick exactly to the laws that are already on the book. So that's the problem. With, like, a lot of these cases, like, is there any follow-up? Are people actually revising and strengthening laws here in Korea? Because if we look at the Itaewon crowd crush situation, those parents are, like, in the same situation as the Seoul Ferry parents, because nobody seems to be following up on these tragedies and strengthening and these laws and making them more specific, so that if these kind of situations happen again, that then it'll be easier for us to make sure that laws are there to protect us against this type of psychopathic behavior. So if there are not enough laws to prosecute against somebody who has led to all of these unfortunate ends, and to even just overlooking that mysterious death at the motel of a whistleblower who was just laying low until he can speak up at the right time, then I don't know what the law is really there for. And so I think there's a double mandate on these politicians who are going to try to bring more attention to this and seek out the truth. And as ugly as it may be, I think we really need to face up to the fact that we may have almost have had like a Hannibal Lecter as president, and that we need to get on it. We need to get on it ASAP. If you need a relief from all of that, all you need to do is get yourself a B1 eye care solution. Listen to her peaceful voice asking what mode you would like to select. Just press it once for a dual mode. You're going to get heating and lighting, and you will basically be able to warm your eyes, increase the circulation, and then find yourself with 48 LED lights being beamed right here underneath. But if you don't have it on, she reminds you and tells you to put it on. And then it says starting care, and it warms and feels so good. And you just have this on for about 15 minutes, and it's the most relaxing thing. I did it this morning because I was feeling a little like tired and I didn't get the right sleep schedule. And then it sort of like reset my kind of circadian rhythm. It felt really good. And then it felt refreshed. It felt like I actually had some sort of like kind of cucumber slices on my face. So it was kind of weird. So again, like I'm saying, like this is a really great kind of way to use technology to do skincare. And yes, it is, it has components, but you only have to ask the earth to make the components once, and you just use it again and again and again and again. So I think it's very, very sustainable, and it's all rechargeable. So again, coupon code Seoulite TV for all of our Seoulite TV viewers, $60 off on ecofaceplatinum.com and soulite.tv. So, all right, guys. Well, put your thoughts below. I mean, this is real life, not a movie. Comments below, and remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye, guys.